If you're wondering as a beginner what's the best toolbox to start off with, this video might help you out. Basically, what we have here is everything that I use and started with as a beginner as well. And it has all the essential tools you'll need to do most of the jobs out there, about 70% of them, the mechanical ones, like changing brakes, wheel hubs, stuff like that, stabilizer links. So the great thing about being a beginner and starting out is you don't need to buy those big toolboxes that, come up to here and cost you, 500 and up to 10 grand if it's snap-on toolboxes. You can start off with these small handheld ones, which are like maybe 50-30 bucks if you get them on sale, and they're pretty good to have because here you can lock, because here I'll always carry this extra compartment, and it has my 3/8 drive, 3/8 inch drive, and my 1/4 inch drive for sockets. Then I got my 3/8 ratchet, and that does most of the job here. I got one extension, screwdriver, breaker bar with a 1/2 drive and 3/8 drive. Alright, just carry some swivels and just a few extensions. About 70% of the stuff you fix, you'll just need about a 3/8 socket, and usually you can have a breaker bar with the 1/2 inch drive socket. So that's what I'm using most of the time, 70% of the time. And then when you go in here, here's your Lug Nut Socket Kit. Right, it comes in adaptable style. You can flip it around and get the right socket size you need for your lug nuts. This is also part of that, as well as this. So there's your standard lug nut socket set. And then here I got my 1/2 inch drive, and this came with it as a kit. I just keep it in there. I got a 32mm socket for wheel hubs, 24mm deep socket for oil pressure sensor and some other parts sometimes. And I carry a few deep sockets, like a 16, 18, and a 17. 2 extensions, and 27mm socket for oil filter. Right, there's oil filter socket, and extension for the 1/4 drive. That's pretty much it. That does most of the jobs right there with that ratchet 1/2 inch. Now I'm doing about 80% of the jobs because I'm not missing a 1/2 inch. So that's a good way to start. And then just need a second box for wrenches here, maybe a couple screwdrivers, essential mini screwdriver to pry sensors or anything, connectors. You always need that guy. And the wrenches here range from the smallest 8mm and it goes all the way up to 24. So you can do it like how I do it. Just get in a compartment like this, throw all your wrenches in, or you can buy those organizers and be a bit more organized, but I have no problem with this. This works well. And then a couple set of bungees, some filter wrench in case, got some vice grips, trim tool, and when I'm in the shop, whenever I work in the shop, I'll have a impact wrench, but I don't really use it, so it just sits there. But you don't really need this as a beginner. You can start off all hand tools like this. And let me just remove that so it's easier to visualize. Like that's all you gotta start with. That does about 90% of the work. Right, 90% of the beginner level stuff. And then you come up to here, and yeah, you'll need some more vice grips. This is a brake pad gauge. You definitely need some Torx bits for some screws that won't come out. That's essential. This is just a battery tester, optional. We got another set of kind of Torx, but bigger metrics in case you got bigger bolt takeout with Torx. Got the Allen head. Sometimes these come in handy. Snap ring plier, good for ball joints. And you can get a tire depth gauge. You're all set there. This is when I'm in the shop, air gun, air blower. You get a punch driver. This, throw these in here. And then you can hammer here so you don't damage the punch. Useful for taking out bolts that are in the struts or something. You can use something like this. Get the bolt out. If it's stuck in there, just hammer on the other side. Helps. You don't need too much pliers. You can get one of these, I don't know what they're called, clamp pliers. And wire cutters. Needle nose comes handy sometimes. Wire brushes are good. You don't need much for pliers. It's a good solid set. That's what I use. And there's just some air tools. I don't really use these that much unless I'm in the shop. But you don't really need these as a beginner, so we'll just close that back up. We're going all hand tools, so far what we got is this right here, which I'm not sure how much it would cost you. Maybe at least under 500, under 400 for this whole thing here, starting out, which ain't bad. Might be a little bit less. Then next, you'll need a torque wrench, which can cost about $100. And you want the good ones. You know, don't get the cheap ones that have a screw in the back here. Usually, those cheap ones, they have like a nut in the back. This one doesn't. The nut is a tensioner, and those break like their shit. They break very easily, so I would not get a cheap torque wrench. Stick to something that has a bottom like that, no nut. Something with this kind of dial gauge, whatever you call it. And around $100, you're safe with with a torque wrench like that. And then you can get yourselves something like this, like a wrench socket kit. This one I don't really use, this one's my brother's. But you can get something like this. It's got the 1/4 inch drive. Alright, now we move on to the other box here, which you'll need some crowbars, pry bars, probably 3 of them is good. We got another big one here. Does a lot of the heavy duty jobs, can't go without. So a couple pry bars, some hammers. This one's a rubber mallet. This one is steel industrial hammer. Right, you can ignore all that other stuff for now. Yeah, that'll be another video for the advanced section. So we got those. Then file's always good to have in case you round out a nut, bolt. You can just file it back down, get your socket back on there, and yeah, if you're ever in a pinch like that, file's good to have. That goes, you can have a pipe for your breaker bar. Alright. This is how I remove my tires. I'll throw that breaker bar on there. And I'll use also that way to, remove tons of fasteners this way. So that's good. Pipe. Magnetic stick. You'll need this. It's essential. In case you always drop things, you always need this to pick things up. And a big ass plier bar. This is good for brakes, putting brake pads back in. If you don't want to get the brake pad kit, that works. Grease gun. Sometimes you need grease fittings with the grease gun. And even helps for your jacks, lubricates them. And that's about it. You can get some WD-40, some air cans if you need them. Clean out some things, but that's all miscellaneous. Anti-seize for your bolts and brake pads and the backing plate. And then the jacks, we got our jack. Just need a jack like this. This is 3 ton, that's for 2 tons. And then you can get some jack stands here, 3 ton is a good way to go. Oh yeah, I can't forget about the work light. This is another essential to have if you're working in the dark or in a dark spot in the car. So what you can do is stick it to metal parts, and that helps out with the light, which is another good tool to have. Yeah, and that's about it. That's all you need for a beginner setup. I like this setup because it keeps me mobile, and if I ever get a job, work for somebody, I don't need to haul in a big oversized toolbox. It's easier to get your stuff into the shop, and you can feel out the place, see if the owner's good to you, and see if you get along there. And you don't have to commit with these kinds of toolboxes. You can leave right away, and it's so easy to move around with these, so I prefer this. I've been using these toolboxes to do all my repairs on the Kia and the cars before that I had. As a beginner, I'll stick with this. if you don't want to spend the money on big toolboxes and you don't really feel like spending a lot of money on tools as a beginner, this will do about 90% of the mechanical jobs. Right, your brakes, you can remove engine oil filters, drain plugs, transmission plugs, wheel hubs, like mechanical stuff, and you're pretty much good to go there. So I hope that helped. That's this video is for the acceptable toolbox for the beginners. Alright, so if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit subscribe, like.
Automotive for Beginners.